present. And
we'll get started with the verse. 1 second, let me just pull the screen up. Right. I'll recite the verse 3 times and then all of us can recite it. Yathatma tantro bhagavan vikridatyatma mayaya visrijyava yatha mayam udaste sakshivad vibhu. Yathatma tantro bhagavan vikridatyatma mayaya visrijyava yatha mayam udasate sakshivad vibhu. Yathatma tantro bhagavan vikridatyatma mayaya visrijyava yatha mayam udaste sakshivat vibhu. Please recite, those who would like to.
Yatatma tantro bhagavan vikridatyatma mayaya visrijyaya yata mayam udaste sakshivat vibhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yatatma tantro bhagavan vikridatyatman mayaya vishijjaya va yatha mayam udaste sakshivat vibhu.
Anyone else?
Sumanji will do.
All right, we can read the synonyms and the translation. Yatha, as, Atma Tantra, independent, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vikridati, enjoys his pastimes, Atma Mayaya, by his internal potency, Visrijya, giving up, Va, as also, Yatha, as he desires, Mayam, the external potency, Udaste, remains, Sakshivat, just as the witness, Vibhu, the Almighty. The independent personality of Godhead enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency, and at the time of annihilation gives them up to the external potency, and he remains as a witness to it all. Yes, Lord Shri Krishna, being the supreme personality of Godhead and fountainhead of all other incarnations, is the only independent person. He enjoys his pastimes by creation as he desires and gives them up to the external energy at the time of annihilation. By his internal potency only, he kills the demon Putana, even though enjoying his pastimes in the lap of his mother Yashoda. And when he desires to leave this world, he creates the pastimes of killing his own family members, Yadukula, and remains unaffected by such annihilation. He is the witness of everything that is happening, and yet he has nothing to do with anything. He is independent in every respect. Maharaj Parikshit desired to know more perfectly, for a pure devotee ought to know well. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mother Shobharati, thank you so much for reading this and getting this going. Hare Krishna devotees. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation once again. The independent personality of Godhead enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency, and at the time of annihilation gives them up to the external potency, and he remains a witness to all of it. There are a number of important points that we should take away from this passage. The first is that the personality of Godhead, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is independent. We hear this term sometimes used as swarat. Swarat means completely independent. And Krishna is the only independent person in this entire creation. Demigods, we read about in the Bhagavad Gita, how they get their power from Lord Krishna. They are acting even though they have responsibility and power beyond our comprehension. And oftentimes we look at them as Ishwaras, as extremely powerful, but they are not supremely powerful because their power is dependent upon Lord Krishna giving it to them. Lord Brahma, we learned about in this canto, when he was approached by Narada Muni to explain how he was the supreme being. He explained that he actually has his source in Lord Vishnu. Similarly, Lord Shiva is also known as Mahadev. He also has his source in Lord Vishnu. When you look at the qualities, so Lord Shiva comes from Lord Brahma, and both originate from Lord Vishnu. When you look at the qualities, we read about this in the Krishna book, 63rd chapter. We were reading just recently on last Friday and this Monday, how the weapon of Lord Shiva, when it went up against the weapon of Lord Krishna, the weapon of Lord Krishna defeated the weapon of Lord Shiva, and the weapon of Lord Shiva began to pray to the weapon of Lord Narayan, then Narayan Dwara. And in that purport, in that chapter, Srila Prabhupada explains how Lord Brahma is in control of the quality of creation, the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in control of the quality of destruction. But they're only in control of one quality, where actually Lord Vishnu has the power to create, maintain, as well as destroy. Neither Brahma or Shiva is actually creating, and Lord Vishnu has the ability to create because he is the original, the seed creator. Lord Brahma is only the secondary creator. And ultimately, Lord Vishnu has the power as well to annihilate and destroy. So he's the only independent person, and the supremely powerful, not just extremely powerful, but supremely powerful. The other thing is that when it comes to independence, is that he's not under the control of any of his other. He's not under the control of his external energy. That's another source of independence. When he's born into this world, he's not born due to his karma being forced upon him. When he acts, he's not acting under the control of the modes of material nature. That is the second part of this passage that I wanted to focus upon, is that he enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency. And at the time of annihilation, he gives them up to his external potency. I wanted to read 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita that explain the importance of this concept. This is from the 7th chapter, text number 24. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and now have assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. And in the 9th chapter, text number 11, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So when Krishna comes and descends, some think that Krishna is an ordinary individual, an ordinary living entity, maybe very powerful, has acquired some mystic powers, but he was born. And then also he acted in this world, and then he also left this world. And therefore he was under the control of the illusory energy or the external energy, Maya, just like every other living entity in this world. And therefore, this text is telling us that he enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency. So let's not get confused. There's a difference between this independent person, Lord Krishna, when he comes into this world, and he acts and performs his activities in pastimes. He is not acting in the same way that we are acting. He is in complete control at all times, and he is actually dictating the outcome of everything that's taking place. This is taking place by the internal potency, not by the external potency. And this is significant because if it was by the external potency that these things were happening, that would mean that Krishna was not independent and that Krishna was actually being controlled by a power beyond himself. So that part we should understand, why it is that Krishna's activities are so different. Again, we read in the Bhagavad Gita that just by hearing about Krishna's activities, understanding his birth and activities, one does not have to take birth again in this material world, but obtains Krishna's supreme abode. There's something special, and this is what is special about it. Krishna is not under control. Krishna is completely independent. So when he's born, so one of the ways that a person could look at this and say, well, Krishna, if he was completely independent, why would he be born into a situation like he was? A very hostile situation. He was born into a prison. And then right away, into, a person who, into a family who wanted to kill him. Born in a jail cell, had to be, escape in the middle of the night. And then, there was this, protection and hiding. He was always, his life was always at risk. Who would choose to be born into a situation like this? And then all throughout his life, there was just a constant, pressure and conflict. So to understand this, we have to understand the reason for Krishna's appearance. Pratanaya sarunam vinishaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna's purpose in coming to this world was to annihilate those demons and miscreants, that opposed the principles of Dharma, that were envious of him, that tried to kill him. Those people that were placing undue burden upon the earth and creating so much disturbance, to give pleasure to the devotees and to deliver them and reestablish the principles of Dharma. So that's why Krishna has to tell us these things, because other than that, our minds may begin to speculate. How is this possible? Why would Krishna undergo such a life like this by his own personal choice? Now, Krishna never suffers. Even though as a baby, he was able to kill the demon Putana from a very early age. It's a couple days old. She tried to poison him, assassinate him. And Krishna sucked the life air out of him. And then demon after demon, Krishna would defeat him. I mean, Krishna would defeat demon after demon. So these are happening by the internal potency of Lord Krishna. And those that would question, well, really Krishna became powerful due to penance and austerity. Krishna became powerful due to mystic yoga. When you look at his childhood pastimes, well, this cannot be possible. It's not that Krishna's power increased as he went on throughout his life, just like an ordinary person, like you and me. Our strength develops throughout our life. Our knowledge develops throughout our life. By the time we're, 18, early 20s, our bodies are fully developed. We kind of gain full strength. Our minds become sharper with time as we gain knowledge into our 40s and 50s. Then gradually we start to lose it again. Forgetfulness starts to set in. But we don't see this with Krishna. We find out from from coming out of the womb, Krishna was as powerful as he was, throughout his life. He was able to suck the life air out of the demon Putana. He was able to, the whirlwind demon, he was able to strangle him and bring him down to the ground. On and on throughout his childhood, killing various demons. Inside Aghasura, ripping him apart. I mean, one after another, Krishna shows that he is no ordinary child. And this is all happening by his internal potency. If not, he'd be under the control of his external potency. This is actually the mentality of the impersonalist or the Mayavadi. This is also important for us to know, is because the Mayavadi believes that Krishna's body is a product of Maya. It's not transcendental. In fact, there's nothing, the highest level of understanding is Brahman, and Brahman actually is undifferentiated. There are no qualities. There are no differentiations. There's no variety. There's no way to describe it. It is undescribable. You cannot assign attributes to it. So what to speak of having a body? What to speak to having a personality? What to speak of having qualities? So therefore, Krishna's body and activities, they have to be a product of material nature. That is why, again, this understanding that Krishna, from this verse, that that his activities are under the control of the internal potency and not the external potency. And then we go on throughout Krishna's life here on earth. And when he was here, in one sense, he was like a man. He was like a man. Not an ordinary man, but sometimes that's the way it's described, like an ordinary man. He had activities, he had responsibilities, he had relationships, even though we know that these are very special relationships, very special activities. And he performed responsibilities in this world. He also tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada charati shrestas tata evetaro janaha satyat mam paramam kurute. I forget the rest of it. I'm sorry. But whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. Whatever standards they set by their exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And he tells Arjuna that if I did not perform...
Last one, Prabhu, Lucas third anuvartate.
I'm sorry?
Lucas third anuvartate. Last line.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. That if I did not perform these activities, people would follow my example and they would be put to ruination. So Krishna performs activities, sometimes just like responsible activities, as if he's under the control of certain laws. But he's actually not. He's actually the creator of the laws, and he's not under the responsibility of such, but does so for the sake of teaching us. So when it was time for Krishna to wrap up his pastimes, that was also under the control of Krishna's internal potency. You know, after Uddhava left for the Bandarik ashram, Lord Krishna, he observed that there were many bad omens that were taking place both on the earth and in the sky. And he gathered up all the chiefs of the Yadavas, Krishna's family lineage, here on earth. And he advised them, he says, we're going to now abandon Dwarka and we're going to go to Prabhasha, where the Saraswati river, resides. And we're going to perform sacrifices and rituals in order to counteract all the bad signs and omens that are present before us. We're going to perform we're going to do fasting, and we're going to perform sacrifices. And so they all abandoned Dwarka. And they went there, and they began to engage in acts of sacrifice for purification. And then all of a sudden, something took place. They began to lose their the elders and the chiefs of the Yadava dynasty. They began to get absorbed in festivities, and then they started becoming intoxicated by drinking liquor, and this caused them to lose their intelligence. And then they began to quarrel amongst themselves, and they began to kill one another. And previously, this was all set by a curse by the Brahmanas, when some of the Yadava youth tried to play a trick on them. And it was quite fascinating, how all this started to unravel and started to play out. They killed, basically, the whole Yadava dynasty was killed out. But when we read about this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says this all happened by the will of providence. This is all under, in other words, this is all under the control of the internal potency of Lord Krishna. As Krishna came into this world by his internal potency, he also left this world by his internal potency. They would shoot arrows. They were killing each other with arrows. They were killing each other with clubs. They took this cane, and as soon as they grabbed the cane, it turned into an iron rod. And there's a history behind this, because they played a joke on these brahmanas, and the brahmanas basically cursed them. So it's basically, they disguised Samba to be pregnant, and they covered her with all this cloth to make it look like there was a pregnancy. And when they realized that they were just kind of mocking the brahmanas and playing a joke on them, the brahmanas became very upset, and they cursed the Yadavas and said that there would be this iron club, and it would become the destruction of your dynasty. And when they took all the cloth away from Samba, there was actually this big iron rod, or big iron club. And they became very fearful, because all of a sudden it became true. And they went back to the heads of the elders, and the elders said, immediately crush this iron rod and throw the remnants, grind it up into a powder and throw it into the ocean. So they did. And then all the fragments of that from the ocean, they threw it in, the waves washed it back into shore. And somehow that iron took seed in the form of cane. And there was a piece of metal fragments that were swallowed up by a fish. And a fisherman caught that fish. And when they cut it open to fillet the fish, they saw that, there were these iron fragments that were left. And one hunter came and got that iron fragment and made it into an arrow for the head of his arrow. And that was Jara, the hunter, who at the end of Krishna's at the end of Krishna's activities on earth, that was how Krishna descended back to the spiritual world. He was in meditation. So after all the Yadavas fought with each other, they came and they grabbed this cane, and this cane, so they're like long stalks. Cane is like a long stalk. When they grabbed it, it actually turned back into iron. And then they started beating each other with these iron stalks. So the Brahmin's curse actually came true. That this iron rod this iron club would actually become the destruction of their dynasty. They started beating each other. After they were all dead, Krishna actually said that it was time for him to wrap up his pastimes. And Lord Baladev, he went to the bank of the river, the Saraswati, and gave up his life. It says that he actually, through the power of his mystic strength, he gave up his body. And then the hunter named Jara, the one that got the metal pieces from the fish, from the fisherman, Lord Krishna was in meditation underneath a tree, and he saw his foot, and he mistaken his foot as a deer, and he shot and pierced it. And immediately, Jara, the hunter, went running to Lord Krishna and begged, for forgiveness. And in reply, Lord Krishna just told him that what he had done was actually according to his own will, his own desire. And then the Lord, ended his earthly pastimes, going back to the spiritual world. So all this is happening. This is not under the external energy. This is not, okay, because of the karma or because of the activities of the Yadava dynasty, they had to come, their lives had to come to an end in this way. Krishna had arranged all of this. And that's why it's important to read according to the Srimad Bhagavatam and hear this according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, because we understand from the language of the Bhagavatam that this is all being done by the will of providence. And when Krishna told Jara this, he told him that it wasn't you. I arranged for this to happen. This is all done by the will of the Supreme. Maharaj Parikshit, we see the same theme taking place. How is it that a well-controlled, knowledgeable, well-trained, devotional king fell victim to pride and anger? It was by the will of providence that this happened. In order for some activity to take place, preceding activities have to take place. And sometimes they may even seem inauspicious. But as they're connected to Krishna and part of Krishna's ultimate plan, we can see as they begin to unfold, it is actually all auspicious. As the Yadava dynasty began to kill each other, and as the kings at the Battle of Kurukshetra became vanquished from the earth, Krishna commented that the burden that was placed upon Bhumi was lifted. The power of the of all these mighty warriors and kings present on the earth at this time. In one sense, it was an opulence. But in another sense, it became a burden after a period of time. I remember His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj, he described this as like a queen who at the beginning of a day puts on a lot of beautiful, heavy jewelry. And everybody says, wow, how beautiful is all that jewelry. But by the end of the day, she can't wait to take it off. And then, so by the process of taking it off, you're de-ornamenting, you're taking off your ornaments. So as these kings and warriors and great chiefs were vanquished from the earth, it was like this removal of these heavy ornaments that the earth was wearing. So at the time of Krishna's departure, he says now that he returns things return now back. He gives them up to the external potency, and he remains a witness to it all. So the internal potency is no longer guiding. Now it's under the control of the external potency. The world is now under the control of time. And Lord Krishna is still present, but now he's present in a different way. He's present in the form as Paramatma, Super Soul, witnessing all activities that are taking place. He is the witness of everything that is happening, and yet he has nothing to do with anything. He is independent in every respect. And Maharaj Parikshit desired to know more perfectly, for a pure devotee ought to know well. So, as aspiring to be pure servants of Krishna, we ought to know this. We ought to know Krishna's pastimes, but also the philosophy, how Krishna's pastimes and activities are not material, and they're not under the control of this Mahamaya, or external energy. Krishna is controlling all the activities that are happening. And then when Krishna leaves, things go back under the control of the external potency. And that external potency, the super soul, Paramatma, is guiding and witnessing all of it. So I'll stop here and see if there's any comments or questions. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Yeah, lastly he said, Krishna will be sitting as Paramatma and he'll be watching. But he doesn't want to do anything, whatever we do. He'll leave us for our freedom. But he'll be watching. That is a very nice thing, and I always think about that. He'll be Paramatma. Whatever we do, he'll be watching. Like those two birds in the tree. That is really something.
And as Paramatma, he's still independent.
Yeah, that's what
He's always independent. Like you said, the two birds, one bird is completely unaffected. The other bird is enjoying the sweetness of the berries and the bitterness of the berries of material enjoyment. And they're suffering and enjoying. They're dying and being born again. But the Paramatma is always...
He'll be watching. Sitting and watching.
And he does this out of his love.
Yeah.
He never abandons us here in this material world.
But one thing I always think, a father, always, a child, if he does something, father will just warn him. Don't do that. You'll be, if you do something else, it'll be safe. Those things father will tell. But Krishna, he'll just watch and see. That's what I always think, why Krishna does that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is there any answer for that?
Why he just say that last part again?
Like father, if a child is his son is doing something wrong, he always tells, oh, no, don't do that. No, you have to be, you'll be safe, you're not safe. But like that, he'll warn the child.
Yeah.
Krishna never does that to us.
Yeah. Well, he does in different ways. Because you have to have relationship. If Krishna would speak to us, I believe he does speak to us. A lot of times we just don't hear it.
We won't hear.
And we don't know how to hear. So
like
there
our
that voice?
sense, and it tells that don't do that, but still we do.
Yeah. A lot of times we know when we do something that we're not supposed to do. So what is that? That's our power of discrimination, which is intelligence. That intelligence is actually being directed by the super soul. But we have the ability to ignore that intelligence.
That's true.
And the mind is what actually blocks the intelligence. The mind is more interested in immediate gratification. They don't see the big picture, or the big picture is covered over with desire to desires connected with the body, not necessarily desires connected with the eternal soul. So Krishna does. Krishna, if we listen closely, Krishna will tell us, will guide us. But we also need a relationship with Krishna, because if we don't have a relationship with Krishna,
then he won't.
right, you won't know who's speaking. You won't know that he's there and that he's listening. Krishna will respond to our prayers. Sometimes we don't even pray. We just think Krishna knows. Krishna is a super soul, so he knows what I'm thinking. That part is true. But Krishna doesn't, but there's no relationship there. The relationship part is that we have to actually offer something, right? We can engage in the 6 loving exchanges with Krishna. That means there's a relationship. 6 loving exchanges, offering some, we don't offer Krishna prasad, but we offer him food. He receives it and it becomes prasad. We can distribute that. We can give Krishna a gift. The gift of our money. We can make Krishna something. We can bring him something. We can give Krishna a gift. Bring him flowers. Therefore, a relationship means I'm thinking about you.
I don't think he will need
you're
all
present
the
and I'm
gifts
thinking
also.
of you. But then the most significant gift that we can give is revealing our hearts to
Devotional
Krishna.
service.
When we reveal our hearts to Krishna, then Krishna can help undo the confusion. If we're experiencing some pain, if we're experiencing confusion, if we're experiencing some doubts, we have to open ourselves and say, Krishna, this is my situation. Right? You're revealing your mind in confidence to Krishna. Only you, Krishna, actually can erase these doubts. That's what Arjuna did. He says, I give up. I can't figure this out.
That's what Draupadi did too.
Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So we have to get to that point with Krishna. Now Krishna knows. Why do I need to tell Krishna? Krishna understands. The relationship isn't created at that point. But when you go to Krishna and you surrender and say, Krishna, please, I need your help. Please just hear me. Krishna hears you. Krishna hears everybody. And at that point, Krishna takes personal interest.
Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam saranam vraja. You have to surrender to him. Then only he will do. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Are there any questions about the difference between the internal and external potency, and how Krishna's activities are under the internal potency? I know it's kind of philosophical, but as Srila Prabhupada wrote in the purport, he says, Maharaj Parikshit was inquiring because a pure devotee ought to know. So we ought to know these things.
That's true.
And we should have an understanding. And if there's any other questions, we can take them now. And if not, we can conclude as you desire.
And Krishna's birth also, the way you said, that's very, very nice.
The what? I'm sorry?
Krishna's birth.
Yeah.
So that was also, it's a very good information. Thank you.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I do have a question about Krishna's birth, and this is something I always thought about. It seems so close to Christ's birth.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it just a coincidence? Is it that those who wrote the Bible were maybe influenced by Bhakti and Krishna. I don't know. I was thinking about it more and more as you were talking this morning. So I figured I would ask, and hopefully it's not offensive asking. Hare Krishna.
No, definitely not. Definitely, that's a good question. I don't know the. I've what is I don't fully know the desire of Krishna and how he how he arranged for Lord Jesus to manifest on earth. But we do know that oftentimes when Krishna or his pure devotee or an avatar, Srila Prabhupada explains that Jesus Christ was a Shakyavesh avatar. So when they come in this world, they have a mission to fulfill. And oftentimes they come into places where their help is needed. So he came at a time, Lord Jesus specifically, just as Lord Krishna came, he came at a time when there was some upheaval. And there was some tension. And as a result, things became quite violent. There was a king who actually felt that the birth of this particular child there was a prophecy that the child would actually become the king of the world and challenge the position of the existing king who was them. So they felt they had to kill the child. And then they went ahead and tried to kill, they didn't know who it was, and they tried to kill all the children in the area to basically exterminate any challenge that could possibly be to their rule. So, I mean, both were born into circumstances that were, you could say very hostile. But when Krishna or his avatars or pure devotees, when he sends them, oftentimes this is the case. Not all the time, but oftentimes this is the case where they're born into some situation because the mission is to bring about a transformation in society that has gone astray and to reintroduce God consciousness to that society. Paritanaya sadhunam vinashayacha duskritam. So to annihilate the miscreants, to uplift the sadhus, and then dharma samstarpanartaya, to reestablish the principles of dharma. But yeah, there are a lot of parallels there, Bob. I've thought about that previously as well. But I don't think it's like, I understand them to be, both true accounts. So I don't think it was like a fabrication that one was influenced by another. I think it was that, these are both true accounts and the circumstances were very, were similar politically at the time. At the appearance of both Krishna and Christ.
Thank you, Prabhu. That makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, that's true. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yeah, their means were different. Where Krishna, there were the assassination attempts were made upon Krishna, and Krishna performed these, superhuman activities. We don't necessarily, see that Jesus Christ mission was a little different in that way. You know, he wasn't killing demons, and you know, the assassination attempts didn't necessarily come in that way, and where he was, you know, killing demon after demon, ridding them from the earth. His mission was different than that. It was actually to bring about, you know, through different means, but all under the same ultimate goal, is to reestablish the principles of spiritual life and bring souls back to God.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, there's nothing else. We can conclude here. Thank you all so very much for your kind attention.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhobhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu.